Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. After the successful completion of the standby arrangement, Pakistan and the IMF have entered into negotiations regarding a longer and a larger bailout program. Now, Pakistan's side is being, of course, led by Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, while IMF Mission Chief in Pakistan, Nathan Porter, is leading the IMF side. The finance minister has updated the IMF team regarding the improvement in the macroeconomic indicators over the course of the standby arrangement. We'll be talking about what are the expectations of the economists and the analysts regarding these negotiations, given the fact this is a track record in the recent past of the Pakistani authorities fulfilling all those conditions which were set by International Monetary Fund. And the standby arrangement was successfully completed. Also, in another major development, we have seen the State Bank of Pakistan in its half-year report has revealed that macroeconomic indicators and the conditions have improved during the first half of the fiscal year 2024. Also, in another major development, while presiding over the review meeting on matters related to Ministry of Privatization and the Privatization Commission, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said, let me quote him, apart from strategic state-owned enterprises, all enterprises either profitable or loss-making will be privatized, unquote. Earlier, we had seen Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb also talking about privatization. Let me quote him also. You have to move towards privatization if you want economic stability in the country, unquote. Besides, when we talk about the value of Pakistani rupee, it has been largely stable against the greenback, while the Karachi Stock Exchange has powered past 74,000 points. All these important developments are for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Nasir Iqbal. He is head at the Macro Policy Lab, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Dr. Iqbal, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time on Skype, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Shikoh Atif. He is senior economist. And Mr. Atif, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Iqbal, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with Mr. Shikoh Atif. Mr. Shikoh Atif, now, we've got a track record in the recent past, the successful completion of the standby arrangement. Very tough measures, some tough conditions set by the IMF had to be met. Pakistani authorities working consistently in order to stabilize the country's economy had to take some tough measures. But at the end of the day, there was a completion of the standby arrangement. Now the new negotiations regarding the larger and a longer bailout program. These negotiations have already started between IMF and Pakistani authorities. I would like you to shed a bit of light regarding as to what measures, what sort of strides the authorities in Pakistan had to take in order to stabilize the economy, especially during the course of the standby arrangement.
Let me congratulate you and all Pakistanis on the excellent work that has been done. As you mentioned, the Karachi Stock Exchange has powered past record levels, and they're breaking their own records on a daily basis. In the international community, there is a buzz about it. And you are absolutely right. Some really, and let me
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost the connection with Mr. Shikoh Atif. He is joining us from all the way from Canada. We'll try to re-establish the contact with Mr. Atif. Mr. Atif, if you can hear me, please go ahead. I think we have lost the connection. We'll try to re-establish the contact with him. Let me proceed towards Mr. Iqbal. Mr. Iqbal, the tough conditions during the course of the, before the start of the standby arrangement between Pakistan and the IMF successfully completed. Quite a number of strides the Pakistani authorities had to put in order to stabilize the country's economy. Your take regarding an overall understanding regarding as to what Pakistani authorities had to put in order to stabilize the economy.
I think thank you for touching very important topic recently, the IMF in Pakistan, and they are negotiating with the long-term arrangement with the Pakistan, and the previous experience, especially the SB experience is a very positive node for us, especially in terms of meeting the requirement of the international financial institution. And the previous government has successfully completed almost all kind of conditionalities that they are asking to us. And this basically provides us some sort of platform to work with the long term arrangement with the international financial institution, and also create some sort of environment where you can say that there is a stability in the economic condition, there is a stability in the system. So, these kind of basically the prerequisite to have a long term arrangement with any international financial institution, not only with the IMF, but also with the like the World Bank, ADB, Asian like Islamic Development Bank, etc., etc. So, this basically is a starter for all of us. So, we should learn from the previous history that what kind of arrangement we did in the past, and what is our future, how we can go about, what kind of corrective measure we have to take in terms of materializing the gain of all these success. So, basically we always end up with the failure in terms of like losing all the benefits, all the dividend that we accrued during the program, but end up with the political economy of this whole exercise, and we lost all the benefits. For this time we have to make sure that whatever we achieve in the last 1.5 years, and we are hoping to achieve in next 3 to 4 years, we must continue with those reforms. Until unless there is a continuation of those reforms, we may end up with the same narrative.
Okay,
after
so
4
how
years.
crucial are those reforms, given the fact when we the continuity of those reforms? Now, there has been stabilization measures which have been undertaken as per those IMF conditions over the 1.5 years. But before that, we saw that the country was faced with immense economic challenges. There was a looming threat of default also that was successfully avoided as there was a successful signing of the SBA. Now, continuation of that reform agenda into the next program, if and when we get that.
I think we should be very clear on what actually reforms are. In the previous regime, we take like nominal measures. One is we adopted a very tight monetary policy with the interest rate like 22%, and then there is some tight fiscal measure where we try to impose maximum tax on the consumer and try to collect maximum tax. But these are the nominal reforms, and we must continue these reforms in the future, keeping in with the economic situation of the country, and also the difference between the demand and supply situation and the global scenario. But as a way forward, how we can introduce a deep reforms, because maybe the IMF would be happy with the existing reform, like they quoted that the decision taken by the central bank to keep this discount rate at 22% is a very healthy decision, despite there is a significant reduction in the inflation. But that gives an indication that in the future state bank might opt some sort of a tight monetary policy despite a few leverage in terms of decreasing. On the taxation side, of course, as you already mentioned in your introduction, that the IMF is hoping for a large increase in tax collection. So, how we can increase? One possibility that you increase the tax rate, or to enhance the tax net. So, these are the two measures that they are focusing, especially to increase tax net by including the retailer and the other shops into the tax net, and also by increasing tax rate on the salaried person as well the individual, as they are proposing, like World Bank also proposing to reduce the minimum threshold level where we are going to impose the tax. But these are the reforms that really to me is a very superficial reform. We have to go for a very deep reform. For example, in tax, Dr. Manzoor will explain what kind of tax reforms we needed, and especially in terms of overhauling the system, how we can increase the efficiency of FBR, whether we need FBR or not. These are the very real question. On the expenditure rationalization, do we have any plan to rationalize our expenditure? Because with the current government size, with especially the number of like department we are running, and the pension burden we are facing in the next year. So, what kind of reform? Those are really challenging reforms, because that will challenge the status quo. it will like create a lot of resistance from the general community if you to change the narrative of this pension, if you change the narrative of the permanent job security, something like that. But on the other hand, it also create a resistance from the trader as well if you are imposing additional tax, and that basically hamper their economic activity. So, we have to create a balance, and PIDE and Dr. Manzoor will also explain on that. PIDE is working on that, what kind of reform package we can basically put to the Ministry of Finance as well as to IMF. So, they can negotiate, they can work on those reforms that PIDE really feel that are important. For example, I just explained the few tax reform, and there are other areas where we really have to think about the reform.
I'll come back to you to understand what other key areas are there. You also talked about the rationalization of expenditure, also the efficiency of FBR. We are honored to have been joined by Dr. Manzoor Ahmad. He is member task force on FBR and tax reforms, also former ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Dr. Ahmad, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Efficiency of FBR, broadening the tax net, either to increase the tax rate. Let's talk specifically about this particular thing. But after, I just want your understanding regarding your expectations this time around, as IMF and Pakistani authorities have entered into negotiations. In the recent past, we have seen Pakistani authorities fulfilling all those conditions. How hopeful are you regarding these ongoing negotiations for a larger and a longer program?
Yes, like any negotiations, originally there's tough talking, but I think both IMF and the government of Pakistan realize that at least we need one more reform, one more IMF program.
Do you think this time around the negotiations are going to be less tougher, because given the track record that Pakistani authorities have done what they promised with the IMF this time around during the SBA?
Yes, for a reason that the previous caretaker government has taken many of those tough decisions. I mean, on exchange rate, on energy subsidies, on you name it, and everything, on privatization, etc. They have tried to move forward. So, it's not that tough for the current government as it has been in the past. I mean, because for any political government, it's not easy to take those decisions. But the interim government, and they had a longer period than the normal interim government. So, they took many of those decisions. So, that makes it a little easier. And frankly, the economy, where it was say a year ago and where it is now, there's a big difference. I mean, many things, you can see any indicator, you can see stock exchange almost doubling from 40,000 to almost 74,000 now, and look at any other indicator. So, I think it's never going to be easy, but it's relatively easier than we have had when we started negotiating for 2018-19, that one. Yeah.
Okay, so which of the two options do you think is more viable for the authorities when it comes to broadening the tax base? Either increase the tax rate or find out those sectors which remain undocumented?
I think Dr. Nasir Iqbal just said, I mean, Pakistani think tanks as well as the World Bank, there's a lot of work done, and I think we should look at that. What are these people saying? There's a lot of consideration. I mean, this PIDE and along with them there's think tank Prime, and they selected 5 or 6 top people involved in taxation, and they've come up with some recommendations. And if I think they're very well considered, and if we were to look at those, I think we can move in the right direction.
Right. When we talk about there been talk about transformation of the general sales tax into the real value added tax. What does that mean?
Well, I mean,
how is that transformation?
Yes, I mean, you see, this is now kind of #1 tax in Pakistan, like most other countries. Problem is that some very important sectors, like retail and wholesalers, who are about same in terms of GDP, 17-18% of GDP, and they are out of this. So they have to get into it, and that's a tough nut to crack, because in the past we saw a lot of opposition from that side, and those have to be brought in. But overall, for the last 15-20 years, we have been making progress in that direction.
Right. What key challenges remain in that particular area when it comes to bringing the retail and wholesalers into the tax net?
Oh, sorry, what was you?
What are the key challenges that remain in that particular area?
Key challenges are
and
that,
how
you know,
basically those could be overcome.
Yes, the key challenges are, for a long time they were not in documentation. You know, whatever the government tried, they didn't succeed. So first is coming in, because actually they don't even there is lack of trust between the government and these guys. They think that once we come in, we will be harassed. That's the problem. So the government has to be more transparent, and also the government has to run a campaign saying how they're going to spend this money. They think it's going to be wasted. So I think these are two basic things. One is they don't have trust, and the second thing is that they feel that once they get into documentation, they'll be harassed.
So lack of trust, does that particular lack of trust or that fear of harassment has to do with the efficiency as far as the FBR is concerned?
Yes. If it is more transparent, if it is more digitized, and if there's no human interaction between the two, if they feel that nobody is going to bother us for corruption, maybe many people like to pay their taxes.
So being the member of the task force on FBR and tax reform, so we just had that particular drive during that very tenure of the caretaker government regarding the restructuring of the FBR. So could you shed a little bit of light? How does that particular reform program address this particular point that you have mentioned, the lack of trust and the fear of intimidation or harassment?
Okay, that particular program about FBR reforms is built on 3 pillars. One is that there will be separation of tax policy versus collection. Currently, it's mixed up. So whenever FBR feels that they're running a little short on taxes, whether it's income tax or whether it's customs or something, in case of they'll put some super tax. In case of customs, they'll put some additional duties, regulatory duties, etc. So if there's a separate system of tax policy versus collection, that is one step.
Right.
The other step is, I think, the digitization. People mostly don't trust. It's been a long history, and they don't trust these tax people.
With digitization, would it lead to a better documentation and better identification?
Yes. I mean, there would not be extraction. If somebody is they come out with this, that you spent so much on this was your earning. So once you confront them with this, I think most people, like in other countries, they'll pay up. So I was saying about 3 pillars. So one was this separation of tax policy
and collection. The second one remains to be digitization, and the third.
The second is that currently there's no oversight board. I mean, there's customs department, income tax department. They can do what they like, because they report to the finance minister, and finance minister has hundreds of other things. So there's no control. So they think that with this oversight board, which will have representatives of both federal government bureaucracy as well as some reputed businessmen, etc. So they think there'll be better control. Third thing is that this department is too huge, 30,000 people. I mean, they think that if customs and income tax, they are separated and they have separate functions, maybe their performance is much better. And that is what has happened in many other countries.
Right. Let me check once again. Mr. Shikoh Atif. Mr. Atif, can you hear me now? Mr. Shikoh Atif, are you with us? Can you hear me, please? I think we are unable to re-establish the contact. We'll continue to try to do that. Dr. Nasir Iqbal, now these 3 or 4 very important points, the FBR reforms, the separation of tax policy and collection, the separation of customs and income tax, digitization, and the presence of an oversight board. Your understanding of that?
Yeah, I think Dr. Manzoor rightly mentioned these reforms, because these are the fundamental reform, and if you see in the previous government, when there was an interim government, there was a lot of resistance from the department about these type of reforms, because it will give a leverage to the oversight board that they can look into the function of these entities. Currently, like as Dr. Manzoor said, they are also the policy maker. They are fixing the tax rate, because when they feel there is a shortfall in the tax rate, either they come up with the mini budget in the name of the broadening the tax base or the increasing the tax rate. So these are the tool that they use after 3 to 4 months to fulfill the shortfall. You know, we should be honest when we are like making our budget. You know, at the very upfront, FBR and also the finance ministry knows where is the gap, what type of risk we have, and they always give with those risks with this assumption that we will cover these gaps this year, we will cover these, and at the end of after 6 months they end up with the same situation that they have to come up with the mini budget and something like that. Dr. Manzoor rightly mentioned that the digitization is one of the key if we really create a confidence among the all kind of the parties, because if I have to pay digitally, I am very happy, because I have no concern with the tax department, I have no concern with the tax inspector, because on the one hand they are charging the actual tax, on the other hand they are exploiting. So even there are a lot of examples where they are visiting the businessman, the shopkeeper or something like that. That is not way to create a confidence. So the digitization and the simplification, but we are advocating at PIDE that the simplification, like I am the salaried person, give me like 1-pager tax return, I just simply put my income, my expenditure and then the tax. That would be the simple requirement. But the so complicated system, even I can't understand what is in it and how can I fill that. So these are the things that we really need to make sure that the tax simplification is the first step. That will ultimately increase your tax revenue, because even the tax gap and the FBR itself knows that around 4 trillion, more than 4 trillion is the leakages within the system. So they can recover those 4 trillion, but they are unable to do that. So this kind of like the massive losses due to the inefficiency within the system, due to the power struggle among the different stakeholders, that led to inefficiency in the policy making process.
Right, you already mentioned about pension. How big a burden does it put on the overall state of economy as being if we rationalize this particular, how big a step that would be considered as a rationalization of the expenditure overall?
Like pension is the one key element, as like more than like 1.6, 1.7 trillion is the burden if we include both civil and the military component of this pension burden, that exponentially on the increasing side over the year and year. And this time I think on the government decided to increase the retirement age just to postpone this issue of pension within the short time period. So that could be the one strategy, but for the longer term we have to establish a solution where that what we call a sustainable solution. For that we have to think about the model that really a self-contributory model, where people can contribute in terms of their allocation based on the willingness to contribute if they are looking for that type of thing. The second, we have to reform in terms of the existing pension procedure and rules and the portfolio, where they are like on the one family is getting the pension and then there is the children and then the third generation is also getting the pension benefit. So we have to limit the number of eligible beneficiaries under one
I'll come back to you. We have tried to re-establish contact with Mr. Shikoh Atif. Mr. Shikoh, can you hear me? Okay, Mr. Atif, now when we talk about the expectations. What's your understanding? We understand for a fact that you are present right now, joining us from long distance, all the way from Canada. We've been unable to connect with you properly. Now, if you can hear me properly right now, what are your expectations regarding, as when we talk about these negotiations between Pakistan and the IMF for a larger and longer program already underway, and Pakistani authorities doing enough in order to, on one side, stabilize the economy after massive challenges the economy was faced with, keeping all those IMF conditions also intact during the course of SBA?
Sunny. So let me just, I know someone who's involved in these negotiations from the IMF side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a couple of things that are very important focus for them as far as these discussions are concerned. Number one, and you folks have touched upon it, number one is the general sales tax and keeping it at 18%. So that's their area of focus and emphasis. Number two, you guys touched upon the legacy factor of the pensions, and so that it's not transferred from, at least not from generation to generation. Uh, as far and towards that end, the Prime Minister formed a committee just 2 days ago to look at pensions and have a reform in that area. As far as taxation is concerned, there is broad consensus that there should be no increased pressure put on salaried class, especially below 200,000 rupees. So no extra burden on salaried class with 200,000 rupees and below. There will be extra burden on salary class above 200,000 rupees. So that another area.
Ms. Atif, can you hear me? I think the connection seems to be lost once again. If you can hear me, you already talked about. Okay, so some very important points. Dr. Manzoor, let me talk to you first about these. Unfortunately, we were unable to connect with Mr. Shikoh Atif, but he has given us very important insight into negotiations between IMF and the Pakistani authorities. He's also talked about the GST already. Now taking it up to 18%. What's your understanding regarding taking it up, increasing that rate of GST?
Really, I'm not in favor of increasing it any further, because this IMF, this PIDE study clearly shows that the more you raise the rate, you're not actually getting more money. You're losing out. It's going in the gray structure. So, you know, if you lower the rate, then, for example, it's in every tax. It's in customs, it's in income tax, etc. So what happens in customs? The more you increase the rates, it goes in smuggling, under-invoicing, etc. We had this experience. I was then working in FBR, and we saw that when we reduced custom duty rates from 1997 to 2002, actually duty total collection really went up. Previous to those reforms, it was annually increasing at 4%, then it started increasing at double-digit level, 12 to 14%. So we feel that, but then let me add something. Just today's newspapers and clarification, they said they have not yet started any negotiations. So many of these things that are coming in newspapers are more speculations. Actually, the negotiations have not as yet started. They're just testing the ground. They're seeing what was the impact of the previous we had 3 billion short-term loan. So how is that going? Right. So those things are happening. For the time being, rest of things are more speculations.
Right, Dr. Nasir Iqbal, I also think that you agree with what Dr. Manzoor Ahmad has said regarding increasing the GST to 18% with those consequences as he has put forth. So let's go back to that pension issue. Now, self-contributory measures, what was the other thing that you were mentioning regarding in order to deal with this particular problem and bringing a sustainable solution?
I think the first, like Dr. Manzoor rightly said, the rate would be the key thing. So, increasing rate would of course harm the economic activities and put a lot of pressure on the existing entities. So, we should be very careful while negotiating the tax rate. So, even reducing tax would be very beneficial in terms of creating the spillover effect and generating the economic activity.
There is another side. He has also talked about a broader consensus that exists while these negotiations will be happening, that no more pressure on the salaried class below 200,000 rupees.
Yeah, you know that so maybe they have a different view, we have a slightly different view. Like World Bank currently the existing framework shows that if your salary is below than 600K, like below 6 lakh, you are exempted from tax. And the World Bank is coming with the proposal that you have to reduce to 4 lakh. But we did an exercise at PIDE.
600,000 per annum.
Yeah, per annum. And we did an exercise at PIDE that even if we have to increase the minimum bracket from 6 lakh to 8 lakh, if we really have to give a leverage to low income families. So, that could be the starter. So, then we have to also rationalize the tax rate against different slabs. You know, currently there are like 2.5%, then 12%, then 25% and so on. So, we come up with an alternative model where we rationalize. Our proposal would help to actually give some sort of incentive for the corporatization, because we are coming with the proposal where the individualization would be discouraged and the corporatization would be encouraged. So, the putting the rate under the corporatization would be slightly low, then it will encourage the people to go for that type of activity. So, this could be the proposal that we will definitely discuss that proposal with the FBR and also the Ministry of Finance and the IMF as well. So, we will give our idea about how we can actually increase or at least keep the same tax collection with the reduced rate. That is our motive. So, how we can come up with the suggestion that give a same tax with the reduced tax rate. So, this is our solution. That is what we are working.
Right. Before heading towards that very important development as to the statement by Prime Minister regarding the privatization of the state-owned enterprises, whether profitable or a loss-making one, apart from the strategic ones. Now, let's talk about this half-year report by the State Bank of Pakistan, which shows that macroeconomic conditions during the first half of fiscal year 2024 have improved. Real economic activity moderately recovered. The current account deficit narrowed considerably. Better agricultural produce. Also, it has mentioned the factors which actually contributed to the elevated inflation levels, also highlighting what are the major issues. Now, let's talk about these major issues which have been highlighted by the State Bank of Pakistan in this particular report, including limited savings, low investments in physical and human capital, weak productivity, stagnant exports, narrow tax base, and inefficiencies of PSEs. Now, let's talk about the first two, the limited savings and low investment in physical and human capital.
I think these are not new like concern and the limitation of our growth model. So, our 7-decade like history would tell us the same thing. So, now how we can address these shortcomings, that need again a deep and structural reforms where we are always reluctant. So, how we can increase saving, how we can increase investment. The PIDE advocate that we should create an ease of doing business. We should have to remove this culture of NOCs. We have to remove this over-regulated economy. We have to come up with the economy where there is a facilitation for the businesses. You know, the investment and the saving is ultimately the outcome of economic activity. If you don't have economic activity, how you can save, how you make an investment? For investment, we have to give incentive to our local businessmen, our local traders. What kind of incentive? So, there is a concern. Sometimes they say giving a subsidy to these local producers like textile, automobile is a way forward. No, it is not the way forward. The way forward is to create an equal opportunity for all kind of business activities. Give incentive in term of doing business, give incentive in term of starting a business, give incentive in term of getting electricity connection, give incentive in term of getting like a hassle-free NOC. These kind of incentive would work. These kind of incentive would give a like a confidence to a common businessman, a common investor, that they come and they will invest.
Right, Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, we have talked about the narrow tax base, also increasing the FBR efficiency. What about your understanding regarding the low investment in physical and human capital and limited savings, both of these fronts?
Oh, I think this point has been well explained by Dr. Nasir Iqbal. Low investment, because we have all these frictions, all these problems. If somebody wants to come and invest here, there are not many success stories. I mean, Pakistan is one of the highest litigations in the international tribunals, whether it's the World Bank or any other tribunal. So we have to make sure that there's more transparency and there's more trust with the government. So it should not be that government changes, the next government is, doesn't honor that. So I think these are the two big points.
Right.
But I must add here that, for example, last year the investment had really come down. In terms of even rupee, it was about 250 billion. This year it's already doubled. So if we continue with this progress, I think that'd be a good thing.
Now, talking about that statement by Prime Minister, all state-owned enterprises are to be privatized, apart from the strategic state-owned enterprises. Privatizing all, how important and crucial is that, whether it is a loss-making or a profit-making entity?
You see, normally government is not their job to be into running enterprises, to running airline, running other things, because no matter they might make profit for 3, 4, 5 years, but then the governments change, and many governments think it's an employment opportunity. So whether they need or not, they put in lots of people there.
That is exactly what the Prime Minister said. It's not the government. Government's job is not to do business, but to ensure a business and investment friendly environment.
Yes, but the thing is that maybe the government says we'll privatize everything, but for the last 10 years, Pakistan Steel Mill has been closed, and they're still paying the salaries of those 3,000 people. And for PIA, every day I think they're losing something like 50 million rupees every single day. But still it's going on, they're not able to do it. So it will be a while before they get to all. So at least, I mean, they listed maybe 2025, which can be done on priority. So instead of trying to do everything at once, let them take prioritize and do those, especially where you're losing money every day. So first get rid of them, and then there are other like OGDC and others which are making some money for the government. So maybe that's a later stage, you can think of them later on. For the time being, the priority is those where we are bleeding money, like this DISCOs, these distribution company, electric distribution companies, like steel mills, like PIA, like these kinds of organizations. I mean, you have to get first, on top priority, you have to get rid of them.
So, Dr. Nasir Iqbal, the priority should be in privatizing the loss-making enterprises, and then in the next phase, those even which are making the profit. So, when we talk about, when we are going towards privatization, how crucial is transparency, and how can it be actually ensured while privatization process goes on? There is an emphasis made by Prime Minister regarding that also, and also saying that when specifically talking about televising PIA's privatization process, also subsequently showing it live, that process when and where it happens.
I think that's the right movie. If you look into the history, the Qaid-e-Azam's first speech at the central bank mentioned that the role of government. He said the role of government is enabler and a facilitator, not to run the business. So the same thing we are repeating after 7 decades. let's see this time we have a good result. But what about the privatization? Yes, we have to ensure the transparency within the system, and we have to understand what actually privatization is, what kind of privatization we are looking for, whether we are looking for the sale of assets, whether we are looking for the managerial transfer of the power to the private sector. So, we should be very clear on these things, because ultimately if the government is is not clear on these issues, maybe they end up with the same situation that there will be no privatization. Televising this whole process may not very important, but the understanding of this privatization itself is important. But we believe that we give a opportunity to all Pakistanis to make investment in this privatization process. How they can do that? You know, selling these big assets to one big player maybe give a lot of incentive to one player, but listing these companies on the Pakistan Stock Exchange and let the people to purchase and buy the shares of these companies, that could be like a win-win situation. There, if there is a profit, there is a dividend that could be accrued by all Pakistanis. They make investment, they can purchase a very small share within that company. So, we should be very clear, though there is no alternative without privatization, but we should make sure that whatever the mechanism we use, because even with the privatization of the PTCL, we are struggling.
More light on this particular. I'm being curious regarding as to what you have suggested right now, allowing every single person in the country to come and get the shares when the privatization process happens, rather than giving it to one big giant organization. Could you elaborate a little further?
First, make it a company, list that company on the Pakistan Stock Exchange.
So, what about the OGDCL, if I am not wrong over here? Isn't it already?
Is it there? But how? To what extent you are allowing? To what extent you are allowing other people to buy the share? That's the key thing. If you allow buy a more than 50% share, and if the other people buy more than 50, they can constitute a board and they can take over the administrative part of this whole exercise. So, if we are not allowing them,
that's exactly my point. Now, the administrative part of it. If a certain enterprise is being taken by one single company, or the combination of 3 or 4 big giant companies are coming together to take it up, as compared to lots of people coming in, buying the share, and what if they make at the end of the day a considerable chunk of being the stakeholders in that particular enterprise? How the administrative side of it is going to be dealt and addressed?
You know, there are always mechanisms. You know, it's not about every individual who is investing or who is controlling the entire administrative process, but there are procedures, there are boards. Those work independently. They like the big shareholder, like those have, for example, we can impose a condition like minimum 10% of the shareholders, then you can be the part of the administrative process, and the rest, like in the other world, like I can purchase a share from the stock exchange from any company, that give me a leverage that the company is listed on the stock exchange, I can make investment, I can get a return. That like a win-win situation. Maybe it's loss, it's a profit, but this will like give an opportunity and equal opportunity to everyone to make investment, rather than giving the one company or one SOE to a one stakeholder. Give an opportunity to all of us to make investments, small investment, and it will also increase the contribution as well as the participation of the general population in the entire system. It will also create a confidence among the general people.
Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, do you agree?
Yes,
or do you have anything to add to this?
In fact, it was successfully done in many countries. Margaret Thatcher, when she privatized all those state enterprises, that's what she did on stock market and those things. There are these controls, and I must say, whatever in the past, if whatever privatization did, say banking, you know, previously they used to give some loans and then they were written off, etc. And there was always scandals. Every 3-4 years there will be a big scandal. And since they were privatized, government has not been putting any money. These people are actually making money and giving taxes, 30-40% taxes to the government. The government has a lot of shares still in all these. So, you know, I think it's a good way to involve the general public so that they have something to invest. I mean, rather than keeping money in the banks and this thing. I think.
Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, Member Task Force on FBR and Tax Reforms, former Ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Thank you very much for being with us on the show. Dr. Nasir Iqbal, Head Macro Policy Lab at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We were able to establish a little bit of contact with Mr. Shikoh Atif, Senior Economist, on Skype, but we couldn't unfortunately have a detailed discussion with him because of the distortion. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.